Hello Yu-Gi-Oh players and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I am your host, the RJB0. Today I am bringing you guys a Thunder Family deck profile. Some of you might be sick of this, but this is the deck that I would be bringing to regionals tomorrow. However, I had a bunch of last-minute work dropped on me, so I don't have the time to go up to Seattle, which pisses me off to no end. However, I figured that since some of you guys are going to have regionals coming up in the near future, and some of you are going to be playing Thunder Family, I would show you guys some of the major changes I've been making to the deck in the last couple of weeks to optimize it so that this version of the deck, with a couple of subtle tweaks that I would probably make in some last-minute play testing, the best version of this deck that I have made, which in my opinion says a lot about it because I've been playing this deck competitively for more than a year now. So what I'm going to do for you guys is I am going to go straight through each category of Monster, Spell, and Trap, and afterward I will explain to you guys how I used my different choices that I made to mitigate the problem that a lot of players have with this deck, which is trying to make it do too many things and ignoring the things that this deck does the best. So let's get down to the monster lineup. I just dropped a trap stun. We have a 14-card monster lineup, starting up with the Thunder Seahorse, your triple Paw Hunter, your triple Maw Hunter, your double Sis Hunter, your double Violon Prism, your Honest, and that is all. So in a lot of versions of this deck, including versions that I've played in the past, I have run other monsters, whether it was hand traps, whether it was Thunder King Ryo, various other monsters that do different things for the deck. Now, I will make one concession for Ryo because it is just simply an amazing meta call this format, but in my opinion, running fewer monsters and focusing more on the monsters that make this deck work, which are the Thunder Family, Thunder Seahorse, Violon Prism, and Honest, streamlines this deck and makes it less cloggy, because you don't want to run into a monster that doesn't use this deck to its optimal potential. And cards like hand traps don't necessarily do that when they are unnecessary because of other choices you make in the deck. So I think that you could make the argument that Violon Prism is not necessary to the plays that this deck makes. However, I think that Stardust Spark Dragon and Crimson Blader are too good this format. So I really do like that Violon Prism, besides the fact that you can use some of that ARGCS Montreal theory where you run a Violon Prism into a monster, equip it to one of your monsters, and then run over their monster. You know, maybe if they have Vanity's Emptiness, there are just a lot of pieces of utility that you can get out of your Violon Prisms. So to optimize this monster count, I have cut it down to just the bare necessities to streamline this deck's ability to do what it does best, which is put monsters on the field and loop resources. So moving on to the spell lineup, we have a 14 or 11 card spell lineup, sorry. We start off with the triple Upstart Goblin, then we have triple MST, we have triple Recycling Batteries, double Duality, and one Book of Moon. I'll start off with the Book of Moon just because it is on the top. I was running Compulsory Evacuation Device before, but I realized that Compulse just isn't optimal this format. Yes, there are extra deck cards that can be stopped by Compulse. You can put extra deck cards back in the extra deck with Compulse. However, most of the problematic extra deck cards this format don't lose to Compulse. If your opponent puts a Tiger King on the board, they still get its effect. If they put an Exciton on the Knight on the deck or on the field, they still get its effect. So Compulse is not optimal, especially since it gives you that heavy minus against decks like Fire Fist, and really doesn't help you against Mermail. So I decided to go with Book of Moon because it accomplishes all those things that Compulsory does by stopping monsters that, can't be destroyed necessarily by, card effects and things like that. But it also stops plays that don't necessarily have to do with the extra deck and does so without sending that monster back to the hand so that you can run over it during the next turn, say with Bear or something of the sort. It can also stop the same extra deck plays that Compulsory would by putting one of the monsters necessary to make that extra deck play face down. So that's my choice with Book of Moon. Let's move on to the draw power, the double Duality, and triple Upstart Goblin. A lot of people would complain, once again, about the 1,000 life points. You make up that difference very quickly if you're using this deck correctly. So it makes sense, since you need to optimize your play, and your optimal plays involve getting lots of monsters with Hunder and with Thunder Seahorse, that you make it easier to draw into those cards. So this makes the deck into 37 cards, making it more likely that you draw into your Thunder Seahorse. Then you add the Pot of Duality, which streamlines it even further. I'm not running 3 because I feel like Duality clogs, and I don't want to have to go through multiple turns with Duality. But this combination right here leads to the amount of draw power that's going to make it more likely that you draw into Recycling Batteries, that you draw into Hunder, or that you draw into Thunder Seahorse earlier in the game. Once again, streamlining the deck to put its best cards into your hand. Moving on to the triple Recycling Batteries, a lot of people only run 2 of it because they say it gets cloggy. Once again, with all this draw power in the deck, with all this consistency, there is no such thing as a dead Recycling Batteries. You will almost always have available monsters in the graveyard to use. And if you have available monsters in the graveyard to use, this is a resource that gets you a 1-for-1 Xyz or Synchro monster, and that is huge in this game. And then, of course, the triple MST is a fairly common choice, so I don't feel like I need to explain those. Let's go into the monster count. I apologize if this deck profile is fairly long. I feel like I've made enough large changes to the deck that it merits explaining. So, moving on to the trap count, we have triple Reckless Greed. Yes, I am Hobening, and I will explain that in a second. Double Mind Crush, 1 Mirror Force, 1 Warning, 1 Torrential, 1 Deep Prison, 1 Bottomless, 1 Black Horn, and 1 Trap Stun. I'm going to start off with the Mirror Force and the Deep Prison. I will get to the Hobening in a second. I'm currently running 1 Mirror Force and 1 Deep Prison just because I feel like there are situations in which each one is more optimal, and once again, with all the search and draw power in this deck, it's more likely that you're going to be able to get into both of these earlier on in the game than it is that you are not going to see either, or if you're only going to see one of them in a game. So it makes sense to me to run 1 of each. If you have a preference for one of the 2, you can take out the other for that one so that you have 2 of it. It all comes down to personal preference. I like the 1-in-1. Moving on to the Reckless Greeds, like I said, the purpose of this version of the deck is to streamline it. It's to put your best plays into your hand early game, and that's what Reckless Greed does. So the theory behind Hobening, that I'm going to talk about more in a video tomorrow, is that if you have combo pieces that you can get into, getting into them earlier in the game makes more sense. And if you have a Thunder Seahorse 2 turns down the line, doesn't it make more sense to draw into that Thunder Seahorse 2 turns early? Or maybe if you have a necessary trap card 2 turns down the line, doesn't it make sense to get that 2 turns early instead? Especially if you get the Thunder Seahorse in your hand, then you don't need your draw phase to produce resources. So Reckless Greed makes the most sense I could possibly imagine in this deck. Like, if there is a deck that requires Hobening, it is this one. Reckless Greed adds tons of speed, once again streamlining, putting those Recycling Batteries, putting those Thunder Seahorses, putting those Hunters into your hand as soon as possible. The army of 1-ofs, I feel, are fairly self-explanatory. You've got the Bottomless Torrential Warning. I think the Black Horn of Heaven is necessary because it's once again a way of stopping the problematic Xyz plays. Every deck this format has problematic Xyz plays that are defensible by things like Lance or by their own effects. And I would rather be able to stop their summon in the first place so that they aren't under the jurisdiction of Lance, or to stop their effects with things like Tiger King or Exciton Knight, than try to battle against them once they hit the field. And then, of course, you've got the Trap Stun, which when you need to make those really killer plays, you're probably going to have it available, once again, because of all the draw power and because of duality. And you don't always need it, simply because you can use up your opponent's resources really quickly, bait out their traps. And, of course, you've got the MSTs, you've got Constellar Omega in the extra deck, so you don't always need the Trap Stun. I think the 1 works in the main deck, and I am running a 2nd in the side deck. Finally, my final choice, that I am making in the trap lineup are the double Mind Crushes. A lot of people don't like this card because they feel like it's really situational, but I can't think of a single matchup in which this card isn't devastating. If you're playing against spellbooks, they search for secrets with Magician. You go Mind Crush, you hit their secrets. You know, maybe they have a Master in the hand, but that's at least one card out of Fate that they aren't going to get. Maybe they reveal for High Priestess. You can Mind Crush them before they hit the field and can be Wisdomed. You can do just tons of things in the Spellbook matchup. Against Fire Fist, once Tenki resolves, you can just hit that bear out of their hand, and then you can stop their Wolfbark plays with things like Book of Moon and Black Horn of Heaven. So I think Mind Crush is really good once again, even against Mermails. If you hit the Megalo, if they discard one dead card, if they want to discard one card that isn't an Atlantean or a gun for the Megalo, if you hit that Mind Crush on them, then they go at -1 on that Megalo, they miss the Sphere effect, and they lose the field presence. Same goes for Abyss-Teus. A lot of people are willing to ditch dead cards for Abyss-Teus because of the search that they get. If you hit the Mind Crush against them, then that Abyss-Teus immediately becomes a -1 for them. So I think that Mind Crush is an extremely optimal main deck choice. One subtle tweak that I am considering making to this deck is the inclusion of Divine Wrath. I found that a lot of the time that I am playing this deck, I end up with a ton of monsters in my hand and feeling like I could be using my trap resources much better. So I feel like Divine Wrath is a way of doing that. It stops effect monsters. It's good against established fields as well, and when you just have that huge hand of monsters that you can develop with this deck, then Divine Wrath makes a ton of sense, especially with the triple recycling batteries, the triple Seahorse, and that double Sis Hunter. So I think that finding some cards to take out for Divine Wrath is a substantial choice and meta call that you can make for this deck. I am going to give you guys a deck profile as soon as possible on the Rank-Up Thunder family deck that one of my friends at Dice Age is bringing to regionals this weekend. I think it is a phenomenal deck. It's very similar to this one, but with a slightly different engine. So that is the main deck. I will go as quickly as possible through the extra deck and then tell you guys a couple of my choices for the side deck. So the extra deck for me right now just looks like one Gaga Cowboy, double Abyss Dweller. I do have some missing cards in here, but I have a friend who is borrowing them for regionals. So the double Abyss Dweller, you've got one Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, you've got the one Diamond Direwolf, you've got double Starleash Paladynamo. I currently proxied Arc Knight. Once again, my friend is borrowing that. Then you've got the one Black Ship of Corn, one Concealer Mega, a second Concealer Mega, once again borrowing it, and then the Synchro lineup, which consists of a Stardust Spark Dragon, a Scrap Dragon, and double Crimson Blader. One change I am considering making to this extra deck is taking out one Crimson Blader and one Paladynamo for a Lavalval Chain and a Daigusto Emerald. Daigusto Emerald increases the looping potential for this card's resources even further, and the Lavalval Chain has two-fold advantages. If you want to run Zephyros the Elite in here, which I'll have my friend talk about when he talks about his rank-up deck, you can do that, but also if you go into Lavalval Chain with an Upstart in your hand, that means that you can put your Thunder Seahorse in your hand immediately as soon as you put that Lavalval Chain on the board, and then it's live. So those are a couple of choices that I might change in the extra deck. However, I just don't own Emerald or Lavalval Chain right now. The side deck, there are tons of choices you can make. I'll show you guys the ones that I'm using right now, but there are definitely different things that you could do. So I'll explain a couple of those. Right now I'm running a Twister and an Xyz Encore, a D-Fissure, and double Messenger of Peace in the side deck. I think that Messenger of Peace is really good against the Fire Fist matchup. It's also very good against the Dragon Ruler matchup, especially if you can stop that Dragosack from being put on the board. You can just gain advantage while your opponent can't really do a whole lot against Mermails. If they aren't running MST in the main deck, chances are they won't be running a whole lot of MST against this deck in the side deck, which means that you can run those Messengers of Peace without fear. You can also, of course, run the D-Fissure against them. The Xyz Encore is for those rogue matchups. I don't even think I need it. I might change this out for the third Mind Crush, which I am currently not running. And that is pretty much the only change that I would make. Of course, the DNA surgeries against Spellbooks and Boojins. and also to a degree Karakuri Geargia. This card destroys that as well. I've got double Overworked for the Fire Fist matchup, and then the card that is changing the spellbook matchup for this deck forever. Double Magic Deflector. This was introduced to me very recently. What this card says, for those of you who don't know, it says, for the rest of this turn, negate all equip, field, continuous, and quick play spell card effects on the field. That means this turn, any card that is not a normal spell card is negated this turn. Any spell card, which means that if you're playing against spell books, if you have this set face down, you can flip this, they can't fate this turn. Or if they summon Priestess and you decide to bottomless it and they go for Wisdom, you can flip this, the Wisdom is negated this turn. So there are tons of things you can do against the spellbook matchup. This is also really good against Fire Fist because if they go for the tanky, you can just magical deflector it, and they lose the tanky play. You can also use this against Lance when you try to use some monster removal on their bear or something like that. You can go magic deflector, and that stops that as well. It's also good against Noble Knights. There are just tons of applications for this card, and I'm amazed that I didn't think of it before and that I haven't seen it more often. Then, of course, we've got one Soul Drain, a Trap Stun for those more trap-heavy lineups like Evil Swarm and stuff like that, and then the double Max C against against Mermails and Hieratic Rulers. So that is the deck profile. I hope you guys like it. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, discuss what you think of this particular deck profile. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you.